Okay.
Right.
Ready?
Okay. Yeah.
This is my half-sized replica of an ENV aero engine dating to 1910. I finished building it a couple of years ago, and since then my pal Tony and I have been running it from time to time here in our garden. There are no working survivors. There are a handful of examples in museums around the world. I think there are 2 in the UK, one at least in America, one in Mexico, a couple in France, maybe 1 or 2 elsewhere. But none of them work. They're all wrecks with holes in them. I mean, and bits missing, so that none of them are ever going to go again. And I don't think there are any models either. So this is probably the only one, the only ENV engine anywhere in the world that actually runs, and it runs well. There were no drawings either, so I had to make my own from measuring up one of the examples in the Science Museum, which took absolutely ages, but I did it in the end. ENV was a small Anglo-French company set up specifically to make proper aero engines for what was a brand new market. The aviation industry, as we know, of course didn't exist. But there were plenty of aspiring young pilots who were desperate to get into the air, and their big problem was not so much aircraft, because those they could make themselves very often, but finding a suitable engine. I mean, there were very, very few engine companies in those days. There were road engines, but they were much, much too heavy and not reliable either. So there was a great need for a reliable, lightweight, powerful engine that could get these pilots into the air. And ENV designed them. Woolsey also made one of their very earliest engines, was one very like this actually, a V8. There were French engines made by Léon Levavasseur, who more or less invented the V8 format. ENV, by the way, stands for just that. It's an acronym, a French acronym, ENV, meaning in a V. So you've got the V-shaped format, and all their engines, all except the last one, which was a dismal failure, were V8s. This is the F-type, the 60 horsepower F-type, and it was pretty successful. It got Tommy Sopwith, later Sir Tom Sopwith, into the air for the first time. He did his first flying exercises, taking off at Broadlands, using a Howard Wright biplane fitted with one of these. And he said in a video taken shortly before his death in the 1980s that he was really quite fond of the engine and the aeroplane, one presumes. It got him across the channel, a very, very great large distance, all the way to a potato field in Belgium. And he won a lot of prize money with that, and a lot more afterwards as well, winning yet more prizes. And with that money he was able to set up his company Sopwith Aviation, which built so many of the very successful fighter aircraft for the First World War. After the war there was no further government need for aircraft of that sort or engines, so the company was sold for £1, I think, to its chief test pilot, one Harry Hawker, and of course his name went on and on and on. It became Hawker Aircraft to begin with, and then Hawker Engineering, and finally Hawker Siddeley, and gave its name to a number of iconic British aircraft right up to the Harrier, up to modern times in fact. So I like to think that this little engine and its effect on Sopwith was the very beginning of that illustrious aviation industry that we're so proud of in the UK. The company gave up building engines altogether by about 1919, I think, or maybe before that even. They concentrated on gearbox, but built up something of a reputation for those, particularly for the helicopter industry that was just coming in at that time. And it finally disappeared in 1968, fell on hard times. It was bought up and of course completely disappeared. No one now remembers ENV. And as there are no working engines anywhere, no one's got any knowledge at all. So there you go. This little model, and it's not so little really for a model, it's quite a big model. It's got 950 cc's, bore about 2 inches. It goes very well, and it usually starts first swing, very responsive to throttle. It's got a very early Zenith carburettor, and I simply reproduced that in half scale as best I could, and it seems to work quite well. Of course there were teething troubles. Tuning is something that's ongoing, and I'm always fiddling about with that. I built adjustable jets. I mean, a Zenith car normally has fixed jets, but I made them adjustable because I thought that's something that's going to need a bit of twiddling with. And it's got electronic ignition, so that I've got nice fat sparks, which means that the propeller doesn't have to be swung quite so fast to get it to go. That's important. It's got these lovely copper jackets. The cylinder is actually made of steel in mine, but the copper was laid down by a process called electroforming, which may well be the subject of another video I might make, because it's a really interesting, if difficult, process. It's an interesting one to do, and I did it all here at home. And so that's the cylinders and also the induction pipes here, and this spherical part here that has the carburettor slung underneath from it. And this little tap on top, everybody asks what that for, and it's a priming tap. So I can connect a syringe on top and just inject a few cc of petrol in there, and then close it, and then it's all ready to go. I've also put a choke on as well, which we use. Other than that, it's pretty authentic in every respect, except for the radiators. I mean, obviously they're not. They came off a Vespa scooter, actually. I didn't want to make authentic radiators because they would have been huge and very expensive in copper pipe too, and they would have been fixed at the side of the engine, so screening it off from sight, so that wouldn't have been too good. So they're meant to be discreet and out of the way, those. But all the little hose clips and things you see, they're all pretty much as they were on the full-size ones. So that's it, and it starts pretty well. I use ordinary petrol, ethanol-free petrol I should say, a 40-to-1 mix just to be sure of lubrication, and the sump holds about half a litre, and that's pumped around. Incidentally, the oil pump, I couldn't see the internals of that on the full-size engine that I copied, so I had to make it up, but it's very simple little plunger pump. It was difficult to get it to fit into the space available for it, but I did it and it seems to work. What else? The coolant is a waterless coolant, very important, because I didn't want any internal corrosion going on. So I got some of that, and it works beautifully. The engine actually runs quite cool. I can not quite touch the cylinders when it's running, but I think it probably runs about 80 degrees, which is fine. We've revved up to about 2,200 maximum speed. I don't think it needs to run any faster than that, and did a static thrust measurement on it once and registered about just over 20 kilograms at that speed, which is pretty good considering this propeller is probably very inefficient. The prop, by the way, is a 48 by 30 inch one, and it's modelled on an early French design, the sort of thing they would have used in those days, made of mahogany in 3 laminations, made entirely by hand with a spoke shave. Lots and lots of sandpaper. It's pretty clean running. In the early days we had a lot of oil coming out of the exhausts, partly because I was running it too rich, partly because the ignition system wasn't working properly. I got the advance and retard all muddled up, things slipping, and still I've got that more or less right now, I think, and it's running much better. So all in all, I'm pretty happy with it. So there we are. We'll give it another run now, and hope that everything I've said hasn't been a hostage to fortune. Okay. Right. We all set?
No, we haven't got the fuel on.
Yes, fuel's on.
Fuel's on, is it?
Fuel's on.
Right.
Yeah, fuel is on.
Right. Ready?
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. Very good.
Yeah.